You know, inside you, right now, exists one of the most sophisticated killers ever evolved. It operates silently, continuously, and with absolutely lethal precision. And most of the time, it's on your side. Every single second, it's identifying threats. We're talking bacteria, viruses, even your own cells that have turned cancerous. And it just neutralizes them long before you even know there was a danger. It is your ultimate guardian. But here's the twist. Sometimes this perfect system makes a terrible, terrible mistake. The hunter turns on its master. The guardian becomes the aggressor. This is the story of that betrayal. The story of a strange and brutal civil war happening inside the human body. This is the story of autoimmunity. So, to really understand how a war like this even starts, we first have to meet the army. And honestly, calling it an army isn't just a metaphor. Your immune system is a highly organized, lethal fighting force. And here are the elite specialists on the team. You've got your T cells. These are your frontline soldiers engaging enemies hand to hand. Then there are the B cells, which are like mobile weapons factories, just pumping out these molecular missiles we call antibodies. That huge one, that's a macrophage. It's the battlefield cleanup crew, literally engulfing and digesting debris and enemies. And then you have the natural killer cells. They're the assassins, specializing in taking out any of our own cells that have gone rogue. And this entire, incredibly complex army operates on one single critical question. As they patrol every corner of your body, they're constantly scanning, and for every cell they meet, they ask, are you one of us, or are you an invader? The answer to that one question determines whether you live or a battle begins. Okay, so if you have an army this powerful, how do you stop it from just turning on you? Well, you train it rigorously. This all happens in a special organ called the thymus. Think of it as a biological boot camp. It's actually huge when you're a kid, but shrinks as you get older because its main job is done. Inside, new T cell recruits are put through a brutal test. They're exposed to the body's own self-proteins, and the rule is simple. If a T cell attacks, it's instantly destroyed. This process is called negative selection, and it is ruthlessly effective. Only the T cells that prove they can tolerate self are allowed to graduate and patrol the body. In theory, it should be a perfect, foolproof system. But it turns out the system isn't foolproof. Sometimes a traitor slips through the ranks. Or maybe a loyal soldier just gets confused. And that's when the perfect defense system begins its attack from the inside. And this is what we call autoimmunity. It's basically a case of mistaken identity on a massive biological scale. The immune system, our greatest protector, completely loses the ability to tell friend from foe, and it declares war on the very body it's supposed to be defending. And the consequences, well, they're devastating. If we look at some of these case files, you can really see the wreckage. In type 1 diabetes, the immune army decides the enemy is the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin, so it wipes them out. In multiple sclerosis, it attacks the protective coating on your nerves, which, as you can imagine, just wreaks havoc on your entire nervous system. With rheumatoid arthritis, the attack is focused on the lining of the joints, causing chronic, debilitating pain. And then you have something like lupus, where the army just goes wild, attacking DNA and organs all over the body. So you see, the target might change, but the tragic story is always the same. The body is under siege from itself. So this brings us to the central mystery of it all. Why? What could possibly turn a loyal soldier into a traitor? The investigation, it turns out, points to a few key suspects. I mean, really think about that. How does a system that's been perfected over millions of years of evolution, a system trained with such brutal efficiency, fail so catastrophically? Well, investigators have identified a few prime suspects. Suspect number 1 is a classic case of mistaken identity called molecular mimicry. So imagine a virus invades your body. Your immune system learns the shape of its proteins and launches a massive counterattack. But what if a protein on one of your own healthy cells happens to have a nearly identical shape? Your immune system, now on high alert, sees your healthy cell and thinks it's found the enemy hiding in plain sight. So even when the virus is long gone, the attack on your own body just keeps going. All right, suspect number 2 is an inside job, your own genes. It turns out certain genes, especially ones called HLA genes that help immune cells identify threats, can have tiny variations. Even think of it like having slightly faulty scanners. Now, these genetic quirks don't guarantee you'll get an autoimmune disease, but they can make the whole system more likely to make a mistake, to misidentify self as an enemy. It's a vulnerability, a weak point, just waiting for a trigger. And that brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the accomplice. because for a genetically vulnerable system, an environmental trigger can be the spark that lights the whole fire. This could be a specific infection, maybe exposure to certain toxins, or even something like chronic stress. This has actually led to a really interesting idea called the hygiene hypothesis, the theory that maybe our super clean modern environments leave our immune systems kind of undertrained and bored, making them more likely to go looking for a fight with the wrong target, us. Now, I know this all sounds incredibly grim, like a war with no end in sight, but the story doesn't end here. We're actually entering a new era now, one that's focused less on fighting and more on negotiating a peace treaty. For decades, the main strategy was pretty blunt. Just suppress the entire immune system. It was like biological carpet bombing, and it left the body vulnerable to everything else. But that's changing. The new goal isn't just suppression, it's precision. It's about re-educating the rogue soldiers and reminding them who the real enemy is. And the tools being developed for this re-education are, well, they're straight out of science fiction. There's immune tolerance therapy, which is all about reprogramming those T cells to ignore our own body again. We have CAR T cell technology, where we can actually engineer a patient's own cells into super specific assassins that hunt only the rogue autoimmune cells. We've got CRISPR gene editing, which might one day let us correct the faulty genetic code at the source. We're even learning how to use the trillions of bacteria in our gut as allies to help regulate our own immunity. We are, for the first time, learning how to be peacekeepers in our own internal war. Which leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. The immune system is powerful enough to protect us from a world of microscopic threats. But that very same power makes it capable of our own destruction. It really makes you realize that sometimes the greatest threat we face isn't an enemy at the gates, but the protector within.